First of all, thank you so very much. It's really nice in a city like this, which many people say Delhi is not a city, it's a state of mind. And that everyone is here in good time. Thank you so much for this. And a very distinguished panel here. I mean, I was just talking, I think the last 30 crucial years is what each of them has actually spent in healthcare sector. And if you look in terms of the history of the companies, we are going back as much as the last 70 years of Indian pharma. We have a distinguished panel. They have traveled quite a distance. I think they've scripted in their own way the pharma story in many ways, right from whether it is Dr. Krishna, we wouldn't have had the challenges in COVID were a bit lessened and they were more comforting thanks to the efforts with Covaxin, which was there, some element. Dr. Sharvil, Patel, again, the innovation drive continues, and whether it was the DNA vaccine which shot into limelight during the COVID phase, or that continues, GLP and others, that continues the drive on innovation. Same with Mr. Satish Reddy. Their stories actually began with the whole focus on research to the way they have a global footprint. And thank you so much, Satish, for taking time out. And Priyanka, of course, has been in the most crucial spaces, so to say, from Granules India, looking at basics, the first line of treatment, whether it's paracetamol or metformins, whether diabetes or this, it's very important. So thank you so much. So it's very nice to be the, shall we say, the immoderate moderator for this distinguished panel. So first, may I request everyone to give them a huge round of applause. The theme of this day-long event has essentially been the innovation imperative. Now, innovation, we are looking at it from two angles. One is in terms of the pure innovation, as in science and research, and looking in terms of a newer solution. The other innovation is the innovative approach. Considering that something will happen from the government, something will not happen, we have to look at our old problems afresh. We have to look at some innovative way in which we can fix some of the problems that we have. The focus here would be to brainstorm and get some thoughts on what some of the, so to say, unending problems that we have, how some of them actually look at it. So may I begin with actually, may I start with Dr. Krishna? While at a very broad level, while you've done that in the COVID phase, but this thing which is there about that India should move from pharmacy of to the world to the innovation hub, do we really want to? And how you think, if realistically, if you have to make a realistically be impactful in this space, what's your opening thought actually on this? If you can start from there, and I would want each of the panelists to just at least share some opening thoughts on this.
No, I think thanks for the Financial Express for inviting me, and particularly Kumar and Poya. And I think next meeting you should have it in Hyderabad. You see, all the Delhi people are very serious. You see that entire hall is everybody serious with mobile, all that. If you had it in Hyderabad, there would be a little freshening of the smiling and all that. Okay?
Exactly.
So next you should have it in
very
Hyderabad.
True. Very true.
So you'll have a traffic problem or nothing will be there in Hyderabad.
Sanjay Roshan, please take note. Thank you so much.
I think, innovation is a big word, but I think Indian pharma and Indian biotech has done one step innovation in a way. You look at we may not develop a lot of things, but the way the production scheme, product strategy, GMP, and international regulatory, that expertise is amazing. I mean, what we gain from that, that is also an innovation. In a good GMP manufacturing, scaling up the production to the global level, these are all, strategically in an innovation step. Coming to the new molecule, which I will talk about ours a little later, I don't want to talk, but certainly India has done it, but then where do we go next? That's going to be a really, really challenging issue, because for us now, the competition is coming from Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh, China, of course China, not to mention, but is already there. But some Eastern European companies, East European country, they're all coming in. So I think that's a time, now time has come that we all have to sit, talk, strategize, and how do we go together as a country to the next level in terms of innovation of a new molecule or innovation of strategy of, cost effectiveness or incremental innovation. Delivery system can be changed. All strategies has to be worked out. And I think every manufacturer has already started looking at that angle already. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Sharvil.
So I think when you spoke about whether we really need to do innovation or whether I think there are two aspects to it. I think I don't think we have a choice of saying either or. I think access and affordability has been the pillar of what we all have been successful at. Why the cost of medication in India is better, because it's obviously everything's out of pocket. Why we are a global supplier of pharmaceutical medicines, high quality pharmaceutical medicines, all is to do with the fact that we created great capabilities all the way from basic chemistry to pharmaceutics to pharmacokinetics and so on and so forth. So I think that has been, and we cannot give that up, because today not only India relies on high quality, low cost pharmaceuticals, but globally we are a powerhouse in terms of supplying this to developed countries. So I think from India having an important place in terms of the geopolitical situation and everything, I think what we do on access and affordability is tremendously important. And I think that reduces the healthcare burden for many countries, including India. So I would say that's the first part. But I think, yes, as we evolve, as the industry evolves, as the industry is becoming larger, we also have to look at how do we do innovation, which not only serves purpose for India many times, but also globally we become competitive in terms of being more discovery-led or innovation-driven. And I think it's partly to do with two things. One is we would try and develop products which are for unmet needs, which is neglected many times by countries which don't look at India and the subcontinent in that fashion. But also, more importantly, I think you go up the value chain. You have more resources, and I always believe that when you make more profits, or you are able to take more risk. Because today the risk appetite for innovation is only held within entrepreneurs and the industry. It's not that we get any kind of risk, majority risk funding for taking large, long, innovative projects. So I think companies need to become healthy, profitable, because if they are, then they can invest and take risk. So I think we need both. I think we cannot give up what we are very good at, but I think we have to then move on to see that how do we get to the next league in terms of discovery.
Okay, that's nice. Satish, to the next league in discovery. You believe still in that?
Oh, absolutely. But first of all, thanks, Kumar, for being very persistent in making sure that we are here.
The fringe benefits of being a buttonholing journalist.
It worked. So I think, but again, happy to be here. So on the question of innovation, while I agree with our fellow panelists, Krishna and Dr. Sharvil Patel, in addition, I think if you see it from the point of view of, where the industry wants to go, from its current, say, $50 billion or so, we have gone public with, what we want to achieve as an industry, that we want to be at least 130 billion by 2030. Right? So if I see it from that context, it's only innovation that will get you there. Right? So innovation is there, in a lot of things that we do at this point of time, but the degree to which we have to innovate and the areas, the spaces in which we have to innovate, I think that's the critical part. So if I take it at the highest end of the value chain, like Sharvil said, at the discovery part, there's still a lot of work to be done, right? So because we still don't have a molecule which, is launched globally, and all of us have been in this game for several years now, put a lot of money into it, but still it's taking time because the risks involved in discovery. But we'll still go ahead with it. It's not something that we are waiting, but because that will provide the biggest chunk of the value that gets created on discovery part. Having said that, even in the other spaces, if you see in terms of opportunity for growth, innovation is possible everywhere, right? So if you see even our generic formulations at this point of time, repurposing of drugs, or looking at products which can go, especially in those neglected areas, like Sharvil said, a lot of things which can go towards public health, all that requires some level of innovation. It's not a Me Too kind of a thing that's being done, but it does require innovation at a different level. Even if you take, technology at this point of time, for example, all of us keep talking about artificial intelligence at this point of time. There are a lot of transformative things it can do. At this point of time, it's more increase in productivity, but there is some level of innovation also involved in that. In terms of the processes we use, at one end of the clinical trials, on the other end at R&D itself, lots of improvements which can keep coming in. You can also attribute to innovation that can happen. So there's several areas by which it can be done.
Before I come to Priyanka, since you mentioned these important points so far and what is I've heard, like since we started with Dr. Krishna, see, for example, one of the thoughts which I heard was, they said like in case of vaccines, we had the government pushing, put the resources behind, get the partnerships, have a target, look at this area, give the resources required and then push it forward. In pharma, select some segments. You mentioned about some areas which you said, depending on the degree and the spaces which you said. So identify some areas like the vaccine drive. Can we not have that kind of a push and innovation from the government and from private together?
So I think thanks for getting us started on that, because especially if you see the role of the government, right? So in all that I've just talked about in terms of reaching that goal and various areas and all that, there is a big role that the government has to play on innovation. Let me start with, again, 4 of the recommendations that, we had put as part of a committee from the IPA chaired by Sharvil's father, Pankaj Bhai.
Yes.
So let's start with the regulatory part, right? So the regulatory part has to be an enabling, system in India which can take us to the next level, right? So there are a lot of things that we face on a day-to-day basis. I mean, improvements have started happening, but they need to happen at a degree by which it will encourage more and more people to innovate. So if you look at the discovery process itself, the whole approval process, there are again quite a bit of gaps in that. If you look at the capacity that needs to be built within the regulatory system, which would encourage innovation at a different level, there's a lot to be done on that. By capacity, I mean, the number of people who can review the process, the expertise that is required, there are a whole host of factors again with that capacity that's something that would be required. Even in terms of timelines, first is the regulations itself, the way they were framed and when they were framed, the current reality in terms of what needs to get done, but at the same time also from a regulator's point of view to also ensure that there are enough safeguards. All the recommendations have been made. We're looking for action, things that can transform.
The person who recommended it is also retired 4 years ago. Anyway, so Priyanka.
So these are the things that need to be done. So that's at the regulatory level. I mean, quickly to go through the other 3 things. Funding is an important thing because I highlighted the risk when it comes to things like discovery, at the highest end. There are a lot of failures which happen along the way. And it's not that, it's like we earn income from day one. Some of it will be because we in-license, we get some milestone payments, but that's not enough to sustain in the long run because it's a huge amount that is required, right? So government also needs to pitch in, right? So they made a start, they announced the PRIP scheme once it gets implemented, but again, it's just 5,000 crores to start with.
Which is hardly
right?
anything.
So which is hardly anything because at the level at which we want to get there, it requires a huge amount. Right, so it's those kind of things, plus even venture capital funding, all those things required. And the other 2, I won't get into detail. We're also saying that, the role of the Indian industry and academics, collaboration at this point of time, that's nowhere there in terms of what needs to happen. So that's another part. And then we're also saying that policy and infrastructure, which will actually help innovation. I mean, there's a lot of detail on that, but I'm just pointing out.
Policy and
policy and infrastructure. Infrastructure, I mean more of industrial parks, research parks, and things like that, but policy to support that.
No, in fact, on the infrastructure part, Priyanka, it will be interesting actually. That session was there. People from UP had come to Hyderabad to tell Hyderabad investors to come and participate in the park there. There, Dr. Krishna was there. He made a very good time. I may take the liberty to mention what you mentioned there. You said that rather than compete and create one more park, let's have a complementary and collaborative park. So we look in terms of, let's say, making the clearances for, clinical trials, looking at APIs, become that hub and then we partner with different parks. So I think those thoughts are also coming. Priyanka, your thoughts on what has been discussed so far?
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. And first of all, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me alongside such amazing panelists, and every single person over here is somebody I personally look up to. So to answer your question, I think how I approach or we approach innovation or how we think about innovation is that ultimately the need, and everybody over here, what are we trying to get to? We're trying to give patients access to affordable healthcare, right? So there's another spectrum of innovation which everybody here just already mentioned. But what I'd like to address is that there is a lot of innovation that can happen on the most basic level, the most basic generic medication, like you just mentioned, even the most basic paracetamol, which is the first line of defense for any sort of illness. How do you make it? There's so much that you can do on an innovation front to differentiate yourself from how things are being done today. So one of the initiatives that we've taken on is something that my peer from the company will talk about a little bit later, but on the sustainability element. Can we do the most basic KSMs, basic APIs, with a green twist to it? Can we make it more environmental friendly, all while staying cost neutral? So there's many other things that you can do to differentiate yourself while making the most basic medication. That's my definition
Yeah,
of
that's
innovation.
very nice actually. So we think green and then say that our green thinking has made us innovative and more cost effective than China. If you can do that for APIs and key starting materials, if innovation can take us that way, then it's good.
Well, you know what, like Mr. Satish just said, I won't comment on China, but you know what we need? It's a huge investment and it's a big, big, big target, what we're trying to get to. Making things green is not just making things cheap, right? So that's why we need a lot of support from the government to provide some sort of incentives for companies to take big risks, because it is a risk at the end of the day. You're putting in a lot of effort, a lot of resources, only to see another country subsidize or incentivize their players, and then ultimately the end goal is, you know, they try to take your market share, which is not extremely helpful.
No, I can completely understand, yeah. If I may now go in a clockwise, Satish, while each of them actually, given the veterans that we have here, specific questions perhaps, not even the innovation per se, even if we take, for example, the generic story, as I was looking, I mean, you see the current environment in India, the market has improved, the sales have increased, but if you want to, for example, you want to replicate the same thing increase the footprint in the emerging markets, how do you think we can make that happen in the given challenges that we have today? I just take that as a digression because that's something which has been there on the mind of many people as well. And since you are there, I want to ask you.
Sure. So if you see in the generics, again, there are different forms of it, right? So for example, in regulated markets, you know, it's more pure generics kind of a thing, the way it works in the US and all that, where it's substituted the pharmacy from the innovator. But then you're talking about emerging markets, which are more of branded generics, like India, right? So in a situation like this, so obviously in our evolution of the company, you know, so it's again to do with, you know, each of these countries and, you know, what kind of a, opportunity it opens up, right? So 30 years back, it was Russia, right? When Soviet just broke up and then, you know, Russia started, there was absolute chaos, right? So that itself was an opportunity for an entrepreneurial company like us, you know, so that's
And you did very well in that actually.
And we did extremely well. We are the largest Indian company there at this point of time and continue to maintain a wide lead in terms of what we do, despite the chaos of a different nature at this point of time. So again, I'm saying, you know, it's like there was an opportunity at that point of time. The regulatory system also evolved in that country. And then today, that's become a bottleneck for other companies to get into that market. Right? So again, so each country, emerging markets, have their own peculiarities. But every time it opens up an opportunity. Just on the same breath, if I say, if we would have succeeded in Russia early enough, right, we also failed spectacularly when it came to Brazil, because we would have entered maybe 4 or 5 years after that, maybe sometime in 97. You know, we failed a couple of times, but now it's a big market for us, because on the institutional part of the sales, we found an opening, especially our oncology products and things like that. So that's a growing market for us. And from Brazil, we expanded to you know, Colombia, Chile, you know, a lot of these Latin American markets, they offer a tremendous potential for products. Take an example of China, right? So again, you would see that there was a time when a lot of Indian companies entered. We also entered, did not make a profit for almost 10 years in the early 2000 and all that. But when it turned around, right, in 2010, there were a lot of reforms taking place in China at an innovation level, which, you know, it's at a different degree. But even when it came to even looking at you know, the generic products, they introduced something called the GEA, right? You know, which gave an opportunity again for Indian companies to register the products there. because we were present for so many years, it was something that we were able to navigate, and we still keep launching products in China. So what I'm trying to say is, it's in the process of evolution. There'll be a regulatory angle, there'll be a market angle in terms of what can be done, and that it again depends on the company at what stage they are and what expertise they have on how they exploit that opportunity. It's always there. Latin American markets, for example, on a very different point of view, there are also underserved generic markets. Japan would be an example, right? So that's again a highly regulated market, and it's a difficult thing to do. Indian companies have tried different ways, but still, it still provides an opportunity. When that will happen is not something that I would take a guess, but it provides opportunities like that. So each market has its own game plan.
Yeah, no, that's important. Dr. Sharvil, again, the specific to you, actually, when I come back again on the innovation part, we discussed briefly the point when we were meeting before this session. The Indian market again, which has been a good story, at least in the last 1 year, we've said some good, but similarly at this point in time, the government is talking about this generic push, which is there. So that only the doctors need to prescribe only the generic, not mention the brand name. As a seasoned player in this, you've seen this whole, how do you see as the long-term risk for a brand? I mean, how do you look at this emerging scenario?
So I think every country goes through a phase of, I would say, maturing, right? So I think in India is the regulatory system, the whole manufacturing system for India is still in a very nascent stage, right? We have far too many manufacturers, we have far too less regulators. We have challenges in terms of making sure that we are aware of what gets manufactured where and in what quality and in what form. So I think unless there is a standard regulatory framework which is same for all, which is centralized, so there is control and mechanism to protect quality in the manufacturing sector. And I do believe that we do have a problem of plenty. We have far too many manufacturers there than what we can serve in terms of the population that is there. So I think there are two aspects of it. One is to have high quality medicines available, we need to have better framework of regulation and enforcement. The second is we also have a reputation to maintain both within the country and outside in terms of high quality medicines. And for that also I think it is important that we have that regulatory framework. So I don't think I'm against GX or if that is the situation that the government will want to take one day, which is not, I don't think right now. But for that to happen, we need to traverse a long journey of being a highly regulated pharmaceutical companies as well as the regulator to do so. So I don't think it's going to happen in the short term because it will be a big challenge, because think about the whole situation. As so manufacturers, as many retailers. How will you, now you are talking about taking the decision away from the doctor to
the
a retailer, a pharmacist. And I think it would be more chaos and disservice to everyone rather than creating any impact. And I think we have, that market does exist. It's not that we don't have generics and generics. So I think it's there in that pocket which it serves. When everything improves, I think India could move towards that. But if you see the examples globally, most of what Satish also spoke about markets, if you look at beyond US and Europe, are branded generics in nature. And the reason for that is that access to information for doctors, access to information for retailers, access to information for the trade, everything is provided today by pharmaceutical companies, right? The knowledge, everything that needs to come in terms of new molecules or generic versions of new molecules. So if that doesn't exist, how will people make decisions, right? So I think there are many things, many intricacies to this, and I don't think it's an easy switch that one can do. And if we try to do that, it could create more harm than good. And in my point of view.
And when you say regulated, meaning like weed out those who are poor quality and all of that, only then it will work.
I don't know, I think nobody has a count of how many manufacturing sites are there in India almost. So to say they're even inspected would be a tall claim, I would say.
Yes, I think it's utopian at the moment, but at least as a thought process, perhaps, it could be. Dr. Krishna, to you specific, and I'm taking off from the point which you mentioned when you had the meeting with the UP investors. You said that in vaccines, there is already an overcapacity. We've not, in terms of new investments or something. Just curious that can these now be therefore used for other things? Can there be thought process in terms of what else can be done? How do we therefore leverage this time at this moment? This is one question which many seem to be having. If you can enlighten on this, and essentially the idea is to understand from you in terms of how you're looking at your current capacities at the moment, how you're looking at this story going forward.
I mean, certainly globally now the excess capacity vaccine manufacturing is scaled up so much, and a lot of them, I know at least 2-3 companies in Europe also for sale.
Yes.
Vaccine manufacturing companies. So it will happen in India also. It is going to happen. What happened is, these excess capacity, how do you utilize them? Is a challenging issue. I mean, converting that into a biosimilar is a difficult, because if you are working with a virus and bacteria, you can't convert it to biosimilar because you want to be away from that. So both are conflicting. You cannot have it. So it's a tough decisions. People, I think the vaccine manufacturing, we are all under tremendous pressure on this capacity utilization. So what we are looking is, how do we focus on some neglected diseases? And how do you put some of the new areas, like whether Zika or new viruses, Nipah for the Kerala, which is attacking. Can we expand those sort of projects? But again, that one, limited market access, limited marketing problem. So you can't have a predictable disease. So childhood vaccination is the only game for us, but then how much it can produce, how many vaccines you can take, a child can take. So I think we are in a big dilemma on this matter, manufacturing facility globally. And also the change of technology, like mRNA, it's gone to mRNA. Now, you don't need a big facility, you need only this much facility to produce the globe. This hall.
Is that all?
That's all. This hall size is enough to manufacture drug substance for the entire world. So the whole game is changing, technology changing is happening. So is going to be a challenging for all vaccine manufacturers. And I think the curve is starting in a different direction. And the platform changes are happening. And people want to have in 100 days to manufacture a vaccine. How do you position the regulatory strategy for that 100 days regulatory strategy? So I think it's going to be a complex period we are in right now. But we don't expect another pandemic. So, but certainly the manufacturing facilities are created, which is going to be facing a lot of problems.
Yeah, we're not going to have another pandemic. This, I'm sure everybody in this audience, at least here, and anybody listening to you will really bless you for a thought like that. Priyanka, if we start again with you, going back to our theme in terms of this innovation thing, considering that we are talking of, being, let's say, globally competitive, long-term survival of this sector, which everyone has actually alluded to, also mentioned there. Stay competitive, have affordability, accessibility, all the other things in terms of better quality, all that. In your view, and I would want each one actually to share some thought on this, in the next, say, not in the long run, as in John Maynard Keynes, an economist, used to say, in the long run, we are all dead. So in the interim, say in the next 6 months to 2 years, post-elections, 6 months to 2 years, what is it that you think on this journey of innovation can the state do? At least the 2-3 priority points which could be takeaways for people. Okay, we have boxes which we can tick next 6 months to 2 years, what can be done? And what is it that the industry can do? Some specific pointers from each of you.
Sure. So first, I think innovation takes time. We have to recognize that. If innovation
not about innovative product, I'm just saying some enablers which can.
No, I understand. But all I'm trying to get to is that innovation takes time, right? So doing something within 6 to 12 months is a little bit difficult, even from any perspective. But what can the government do is, like I mentioned earlier, like everybody mentioned, facilitate it, create some sort of schemes to incentivize research. We need to have some sort of a coalition between public and private sector with the government's support to make sure that research is funded, research is encouraged at whatever level it might be. For us, for example, if we have to do some sort of innovation, it requires a lot of scale. Granules is a scale-based business. For that, you need a lot of funding, like CapEx, especially CapEx. you need some sort of support from the government to essentially take over countries that are doing it already, especially because you need to do it a different way. So I think that a relationship between not just pharma and pharma companies, but the public and private sector, and pharma and non-pharma based tech companies, AI companies, whatever it might be, that sort of a collaboration that is aided by the government can really help us.
When you say tech company, can you just explain when you say, that I didn't quite catch, pharma and tech companies?
There's a lot, like for example, Dr. Ella was talking about quality production, right? There's a lot that we can do as to be quality manufacturers via AI. So we are actually now introducing some level of tech into our manufacturing. So if somebody needs to look at, say, a GMP document, you have one of those like Oculus-like models that we have right now. They can just look through that instead of going through documents and tens and thousands of documents. Training sessions are being provided through some sort of AI technology that we're implementing in our manufacturing areas right now. So that level of intervention, that level of differentiated thinking is something that we are putting into our systems right now. And we can develop the quality of many other manufacturers in the country if we have the government support, all these up and coming companies in some way or the other.
Okay. Satish, your thought?
So I think keeping that similar framework which I mentioned earlier on what needs to be done. So again, if you see the time frame that you set, 2 to 6, you said 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah. You could
Right,
extend it, but I thought maybe.
No, I mean, if you just take that as a reference, what I would say is, so maybe set the stage for some clear wins, in these different areas, right? So let me just take some examples. I've talked about regulatory. Sharvil has also talked about it. And if you leave Dr. Krishna to talk about it, he will continue for the whole session on that, right? So, because I mean, that's a bottleneck. There are a lot of bottlenecks which manufacturers face. While there is one phase of it which is to do with really low quality stuff that's been happening in the country, which is not in the interest of the patient, while that needs to be enforced very quickly, to enable things, especially for innovation, it requires that change in the processes, right? We still face the same old issues. I won't get into details, but there are enough recommendations being done. Unless we take big steps in that, they're not easy to take, but that it can be done. And the time frame that you're talking about, it can be done because we've been at it for the last, 3 years or so. Again,
Big step as in, for example, just one.
Just one example, right? So all of us are in biosimilars, for example, biological products. In terms of dealing with it, the multiple agencies that we have to deal with, and some of the things which are not non-existent elsewhere. We're talking about innovation, right? There is something called test license in this country. Only India has this. No other country has this. There was a reason for which it was introduced earlier. There's a reason which the government still wants to keep it for this time being, to keep control of, some situations. But the thing is not really required, right? In new products, for example, the Sharvil also watch for this. There was a time we go to Australia to do this initial research. Because of the time it takes, because of the permissions, approvals we have to go through, all that, is time lost and money lost for us, right? So we pay more money, right, and do phase 1 clinical trials in Australia. I mean, we have come back doing it in India, but still, for this to increase, regulatory system has to change. And then again, a whole host of issues. Again, we have
So like, for example, just to say, like, for example, in the tax structure, if the highest taxpayer is given some gold car or something, higher treatment because you paid higher taxes. So like for bigger exporters who have had a track record, should there be like faster clearances for them? Some such thing are you talking? I mean, am I getting it right?
Also, because from the financial side, again, I'm saying it's within the government's reach in terms of what can be done. Because if I take it from the end of, say, research part of it, there also tax incentives, which is a very common thing which is being done, right? So that's something I don't think it's happening here, right? So they're more looking at, promotion of research. That's what seems to be happening. But all I'm saying is it's not enough. The kind of incentives that we get at this point of time is not really good enough to say that, we will do innovation at the level at which, say, for example, China, which I keep talking about at different points of time, they started much, much later than us. Almost 15 years later than us. But the outcomes of what they did on this framework that I talked about, right? Research and funding, changes in the regulatory system, industry academic collaboration, harmonization, for example, with international agencies. All these are the steps which they have done. And if you see the outcome at this point of time, the value of the industry that they've created on innovation, right, is huge. if you see the products that they've come out with and licensed to multinationals, right? They're not just in China, but the products that they've got, are at breakthrough designations at the US FDA. That's the level of products. They've licensed to the topmost multinationals. They've done global clinical trials. So, I mean, they've done things at a very different level. They're at that stage. So if India has to catch up, needs to evolve to that stage, it needs a lot more support from the government. Last point I would still talk about is this industry-academic collaboration. I need to stress on it because the government also can do something, because all of you have heard of NIPERS, right? There was a point of time when they were also coming to a point of closure, but from the proactive, encouragement from the government, things have started reviving, right, at this point of time. So there's lots more that the government can do through these NIPERS in terms of capacity building, in terms of, collaborating with industries, in terms of even bringing some of the regulatory science, for example, which is much needed to, improve the regulatory system in this country. There's lots more NIPERS can do, and I think the government is actively encouraging it. Even the funding also has slightly gone up, but I think things can move at a much faster pace, which will change the whole landscape, the whole ecosystem for innovation.
Just to harbor on this, just one point. If in this time period, if there was one or two specific things that you think can be done, just as a takeaway for people, what would that be?
So, like I started, one specific thing is make the changes in the regulatory system, which Sharvil's father has, put into the government.
Has been at it for a long time. Yes.
Makes a huge change, and it can be done. Right, so that's one part of it. There will be things which will be long-term in the regulatory. We understand the limitations of the regulatory in this, especially when I talk about capacity. For example, in the regulatory system, there is more and more people required in that. So I think it needs to be enabled for the regulator for him to implement that. Okay. I believe it's stuck somewhere. Okay. Right, so it's those kind of things from the regulator's point of view. From the industry point of view, this multi-agency thing that I'm talking about, when it comes to biological products, it can be done tomorrow. Okay. Right, so it's not something that needs to wait. So it's these kind of things that will be done on the regulatory front. All I wanted to say on the funding part is, so they have launched the promotion of research scheme at this point of time. Again, I'm saying it's not enough. Can there be some bold thinking? Can there be a bigger funding that can be put into it? And also a policy which makes sure that it's encouraged on all fronts, not just the industry. I'm talking about academic institutions. I'm talking about a lot of other things, venture capital, for example. They can create joint funds. There are a lot of things which need to be done on the funding space, which will encourage more and more people to jump into innovation.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Sharvil, on this question, when I asked Pankaj about one specific suggestion, he said 50,000 crores fund of funds. You do that, and you can do a lot in this and create a market in India for innovative drugs. He says, if my biggest market for innovative drug is 500 crores, then what do I do? This is what I had heard. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
So I think I want to build on to what Satish also spoke about. I think there are 2-3 tangible things. My one of this view is a little bit more extreme than what we have sort of agreed on. I think today the regulator is risk averse. Risk averse. They don't want to take any risk. Now, science and discovery is all about risk. Risk from first in human, first in animal, to first in human, to doing all of this. Now, if you have a regulator who's risk averse because of challenges or things that have happened around, how can the same thinking person or team think about taking risk? So I strongly believe that we need almost a different body to drive for pure innovation, discovery, and all of that, because I think if we don't do that, then we will have so much, I would say, permissions that one needs to take and beyond what one needs to take in many developed countries. So, we were the biggest proponent of doing studies in India. Now my phase 1 studies are happening in US or Australia, because we became risk averse to testing anything on Indian patients. Something bad happened doesn't mean that for that you just destroy the whole innovation and discovery part of what happens in India. So I think part of the problem is that we need to have a different regulatory, which is a single body, a single source or single place where all approvals should happen, and you don't need to go through multi-agencies to get a new drug application, a new drug filing going through. So I would say that is the first thing, that if there were ever a different team, that would be good. The second is this fund thing. Long ago we used to have infrastructure development banks. which funded people with no money to build. I mean, today the largest steel company, cement company, came up by infrastructure development fund. That's gone obviously there. I think that kind of fund or system needs to be created for India, where that kind of fund is available for risk, for taking risk and all of that. And as Indian entrepreneurs are, I'm sure there'll be returns, but somebody has to sort of have faith first that this needs to happen. The third area is this whole digital health mission that in India is, the government of India and Prime Minister has spoken about. I think it has tremendous opportunity for innovation, not in 1 to 2 years, but if you look at US and the other world, now they have real world evidence data. And companies after company are using that to discover, repurpose molecules, discover new molecules, find new indications for their current medicines and find it. And so the time to innovate is becoming faster. Now, once India is able to create digital health records, all of this, I think India has the same opportunity to create real-world evidence data, which will mean that then you can create knowledge graphs, which means that you can use that now to do better innovation for India. So I would say that is one more area which is really interesting. And the final, there are many, but one more is, let's, as you spoke, let's for some diseases allow disproportionate attention. Certain types of cancers that are prevalent in India, certain types of
neurological disorders.
To do the next cardiovascular drug or diabetes drug is not needed, in my view, because we have enough lines of treatment that can do well for it. So you want to now innovate for certain cancers, you want to innovate for certain genetic disorder issues, you want to innovate for now doing stuff in autoimmune, which has become a big issue, COPD, asthma has become a big issue, certain vaccination, which is imperative, which is already happening, so I won't say that. So I think if certain diseases are identified, which are not only niche, but have create value, and if you focus innovation or funding to that, also can potentially put India on a different league or different map. But for sure, as is the end of the day, we need regulations to change, because today it is, I mapped biosimilar approval, 41 approvals are required.
41?
1 month or few days, the amount of going there, coming back, you have to do. Nobody wants it. I don't think the regulator wants it, neither do I want it.
41 approvals,
yeah.
For what?
Stages to get a product through from beginning to the end.
So this hasn't changed. These numbers around 40 used to be mentioned years ago.
Yeah, it's
47 used to be there at that time. I think from 7 to 41 perhaps.
So I think, as I said, a different regulator for discovery, innovation, breakthrough innovation is required, or thinkable. Maybe not practical in my mind, if I want to say, but at least, or some changes which are dramatic.
Okay. Dr. Krishna, what changed during the COVID time period that enabled science and speed aligning so well? What can be some examples from there which we can, in this pharma scenario use? If you can throw some light on that.
This is a very tough question. I think we've been talking from 2000 onwards to 2024. Regulatory. 2000 Mashalkar committee was there. We were talking about regulatory. 2023, we are still talking about regulatory.
Right.
It become more complex right now.
Correct.
Okay. I think, Indians loves regulation.
Sorry?
Indians loves regulation.
Indians love regulation.
In the house, wife wants a regulation and husband wants to have a regulation on the children. Like everybody likes a regulation in the house. Yeah, I think we are culturally built as a human being, Indians, that we love regulation, control everybody. We want to control everybody. I don't know whom to control, I don't know. And I think this is the only country where in the world R&D is regulated. There's no other country in the world. I've seen at least 45 countries. I've never seen any country in the world where R&D is regulated. R&D is the one, you get an idea, you want to do experiment by tomorrow. Not even tomorrow, today itself. You get a early morning, 5 o'clock idea, you have to execute the experiment, by 5 o'clock you have to have an answer. That's how the innovation happens. You want to order a plasmid, you go to RCGM and wait for the 3 months, 4 months, plasmid comes and reagent comes, and what do you do it? Like you asked, many people doesn't come on the timing for the FDA meeting. Why? Because of traffic. The traffic makes you choke, your efficiency goes down. The same thing, the regulation chokes, your mindset is gone. And I think the pandemic time, there's a political will that it has to do it for the national interest point of view, public health point of view. It has happened, okay? But I just want to make, if you give me permission,
Please.
I want to make innovation in simple language to the people.
Thank you. That's a very important
Okay?
thing for us.
Because, everybody thinks innovation is something is taught in the classroom. Nobody teaches in the classroom. As a scientist, as an entrepreneur, I look at simple things. My boss only one thing told me, think science in simple language. You'll find the best solution in the world. If you start thinking in a complex manner, you will never find a solution. And Indians love complex manner. That's why we don't find any solutions for anything in the life. So I'll give you an example. When the existing typhoid vaccine was available in the country, worldwide, it is only available about 2 years, people, and not efficacy of 60%. And every 3 years you have to take a vaccine. I looked at who gets a typhoid in India. It's a child. The child in rural area, they lick the floor, they take a unhygienic food, yesterday night food they eat, so they get a typhoid problem. The child gets it. So then how do you solve that? The existing vaccine cannot go to child. Okay? We looked at, okay, can we develop a technology for that? So we developed a typhoid conjugate vaccine, first time in the world. And when we did a clinical trial in India, all that is done, we went to Gates Foundation, said we want to have it a global vaccine, this one. They said, you have done a clinical trial in India, because I want to explain how the clinical trial is complex. That is also important in a product development
Yes.
or the innovation angle. Without clinical research, you can't make an innovation to happen. So they said, okay, you have done a clinical trial in India where the antibiotic is so much used in the country, whether the vaccine is protecting or the antibiotic is protecting, we can't make a differentiation. So your clinical trial is absolutely useless. So then you get a next problem. Then we ask them, I believe in my product, but I want to have a challenge on this. They said, okay, we'll agree. You have to do human naive population in Oxford in UK, where there's no typhoid incident. Everybody is a naive population. They're not been exposed to typhoid. So we have a human challenge studies. Are you ready for that? Yeah, we will take insurance, health insurance, all the liability insurance. We have to take a lot of international liability insurance. One fellow dies in that place, UK, I had to pay 5-6 million pounds. So we have taken all the insurances and all that. Gates Foundation funded Oxford there. We did 120 people. Just I want to ask, how many men here willing to take a live typhoid into the orally? Tell me honestly. How many? One person also doesn't. Thank you, sir. At least one person, one young man has lifted the hand. All old people here need lift. So I think it shows that we don't respect our clinical research in this country. We don't respect even Indian innovation. We're suspicious about it. This is a mindset of the people of the innovation also. We don't believe our own innovation. So what happened? We did a human challenge studies. We got 87% efficacy. The next question is they ask, okay, it works in the human system in a laboratory situation. How will it work in the field situation? Then we had to do 8 different country clinical trial. And you won't believe it. In Pakistan, in 60 days, we got approval for the phase 3 trial. Phase 4, approval in 60 days. Human challenge studies in Oxford, we got in 4 months clinical trial permission. In phase 2B approval in UK. In India, it would take 18 months. 18 to 24 months in India. We had to go to other countries. We got all the permission, Malawi, Burkina Faso, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Ghana, all the countries we got approval, everything less than 3 months. And we did effectiveness studies, almost 1
This
million.
is despite government being with you.
Government is with you, but I'm doing the trial outside, thanks to them, because I don't come under the Indian regulatory system. If I had come in the regulatory system, I will never make it that effectiveness studies. We are doing 8 countries effectiveness studies and published all the international journal. 1 million people vaccinated child. One school is vaccinated, another school is not vaccinated. Look at the typhoid. And then 7 years follow-up on the trial. 7 years we got effectiveness, almost 89% effective for the trial in that thing. So this is simple. It is not innovation. It is nothing somebody teaches in the classroom. You see a small problem of a country, you take it as an issue. That issue, you try to put the plug in the technology. What Satish, everybody is talking about is the regulatory. How do you facilitate the process to make it happen faster? Our regulator thinks we are here to kill the people. We are here to, hurt somebody. Which human being want to hurt some other human being? Nobody wants hurt. But at the same time, safety is important. I'm not denying that, please. Because, the co-vaccine time, everybody talked about Pfizer vaccine, 100% efficacy, all those things. I only once said to Rahul Kanwal in India Today, Three important factors for the humans in the vaccine: safety, safety, safety. Everybody talked efficacy. That time, all the media people talked about efficacy. Now everybody talks about safety of the vaccine who are taking the vaccine. So everything tells the game. So nobody is willing to compromise on safety of the people. But what is important, they have to be scientifically rational, and the regulatory people has to have pressure to facilitate the innovation to happen in the country. And that pressure is not there. I don't think we're going to have any changes in this country. And I think, many people will be thinking, can we do some R&D somewhere else? Like Australia, team was there in BioAsia. You know what they said? Phase 1 permission in less than 18 days.
You don't need to apply also.
No, don't even apply. They said, you should just inform them. Inform the TGA. That's what they said. Inform the TGA. Your institutional ethical committee approved. You can proceed with the trial with intimation to TGA. 18 days. You see the innovation that how fast? So innovation is an idea. It lightning speed, it works. And if that lightning speed is breaks, your lightning is gone. And that is where our problem is. And I think the media is not taking it very seriously. That issue first. And then we are wasting time on all other things in the world. And I think the root cause of the innovation problem of the country is the ecosystem and the regulatory system. Thank you.
I was wondering why media bashing hasn't happened so far. I know, and Dr. Ela pointed out at me and said, media people. So we do our homework, sir. We genuinely try.
I'm not criticizing you, but I want to challenge you people to make it to happen, because unless you take it, we can't succeed, honestly. Because you need to take it up, because when we talk, they think, oh, these guys are business people. They want to exploit the government. Who want to exploit the government? What is there? The government doesn't have money to exploit also. Okay? So nothing to exploit them. Okay? So I think, what is important is India not to lose the game. Today, we have competition with the Bangladesh, which is getting aggressive in terms of innovation. Vietnam is getting aggressive on innovation. Indonesia is getting aggressive. Africa, 32 vaccine manufacturers have set up. 32 vaccine companies. Zero was there before COVID. Now 32 manufacturing companies. How do you compete them? So we are under pressure. How India should not lose out.
That is true.
It is not that we want a business to succeed. We want India to succeed. That's our goal. Thank you.
That's true. No, in the biotech space itself, I think before we started out, already Korea, all those people, Samsung, all of them went way ahead, and then we were struggling, which is why still the share of biotech in regular pharma companies is still a low percentage. I think there are challenges, of course, I agree. I'm constantly looking at the clock and the time that the speakers have here. Just one quick point about when each of you just want to get your thought. These talk of this 130 billion by 2030. Do each of you feel that we are on track? And some closing thoughts in terms of what you think when we talk of innovation in healthcare as the key takeaway for people to think about. If I could just leave that with a thought from each of you. Priyanka, from you.
I'll just start with the second part of the question. Innovation, like Dr. Ella just said, is not rocket science. It depends on how you look at it. How we look at innovation is, look at the most basic products. Look at every single component that goes into it. Whether it's the actual API, KSM, the polymers, the excipients that go into it. How do you change it? How do you make it more sustainable? Not just from an environment perspective, but also from a cost perspective, from an efficacy perspective, safety perspective, quality perspective. There's so many things you can do with the most basic medication. So while everybody here and their companies are doing something totally different, the next generation of innovation, we're in the middle. We're getting there, but we're still in the middle because we do believe that the small molecules are still here to stay for a long time. And how do we make them more safe? How do we make them more affordable? That's what we're focusing on. That's how we're addressing innovation.
Okay, thanks, Satish. Yeah.
So that $130 billion, so it's not a sales target, for the Indian pharmaceutical industry, nor is it like a revenue target for this one. So in the sense that from where we are today, and what's the potential, and is it doable?
Yeah.
So that's how that was framed, from the IPA when they put that report out. And clearly, it's like, is it doable? Certainly believe yes. But I'm saying the enablers for that are all the issues that we talked about so far. Right. So I think that's the key point in terms of what needs to be done. Because if I were to just break that down to say, it's like what can be done on the value side, especially where it can, not just incrementally, but it can be transformational, will be this in the innovative products we're talking about. Right. So starting at the high level, NCs, NBs, at that level, and also certain innovative products which treat which deal with some unmet needs like Sharvil talked about, which can be improvised generics. So it's at that level, more biosimilars, for example, right? So that's at one level. Other part would be on the markets, right? So because we also have a substantial part which is exports. 50% of that $50 billion is exports at this point of time. There's again a lot of potential out there because in terms of competitiveness, right? So Indian companies are very, very strong. If again they find enablers from all angles, right? We haven't touched on the supply chain issues, but there are a whole host of it.
Huge.
It's like it also provides an opportunity at one end, but it also, I think, needs some level of encouragement. Not just the PLI 1 or 2 schemes which have been done, it requires much more at that front at a very policy level and also funding, infrastructure, which is, very crucial. And then I would say in terms of the markets, untapped, or I would say more potential, which can be unleashed in certain markets. Like I said, Latin American markets, Japan as a country, what I'm talking about, China. There are a whole host of markets where I think Indian companies can make a difference in the exports front. All this, if you sum it up, that 130 is
very
definitely
good.
possible.
Thanks. Sharvil.
So I think, I would say similar. I think India, couple of things have happened, which is for the good. One is with these FTAs that got done, this mutual recognition of our products, regulated market products in other countries, is a big step for us to improve our export business. So I think it has been, that effort by the government has been tremendous, and as more of them happen, I think Indian generic companies will have a great opportunity of exporting more complex products in more countries, which just means we'll grow. So I think one big lever of growth and potentially achieving a larger export-oriented growth will be this thing that is just happening. So I am very confident that Indian entrepreneurs will find opportunities both inorganically, organically, whichever way, and become a larger in the current form. The second, I would say, what we all are also looking at is that just the medicine is not the solution. For many chronic conditions, you have to go beyond the medicine, because even diabetes today, with the best of diabetes care, you are still I hear about, maybe wrong, but let's say at least 40% of people are uncontrolled on diabetes. I think I heard the number
1 in
60.
every 11 is a diabetic or a pre-diabetic.
Yeah, no, that is different, but just uncontrolled being on a medicine.
Okay,
and that's
yeah,
because
okay,
you're only
okay.
being on a medicine is not the only solution. So I have a very strong belief that with this whole IT technology, AI, point of care diagnostics, more companion diagnostics, more partnering, creating ecosystem, the success between care and medicine. I think if Indian pharmaceuticals collaborate, partner with healthcare or in some form, and create this connected ecosystem for certain chronic conditions, I think we can do tremendous impact. And when we do a few things in, like we started in liver, in breast cancer, we're seeing significant benefit, not only from the medicine being better, effective, but more importantly, the outcome, which is what we all want for. You don't want a person to take medicine and not get better. So I think all of those things are growing well in India. You have sessions on diagnostics and how efficient that's becoming. You have the hospital systems are improving, care systems are coming up, insurance is coming up. I think over a period of time, India will see a far better health outcome. And if pharmaceutical companies also play part of that role in terms of partnering, I think that also has a great meaningful impact in terms of both value, but more importantly, doing good.
Great, thanks. Dr. Ella, any point?
What do you want me to say, Kumar?
No, just the part, they say about $130 billion by 2030, that kind of a goal. Which is
You are asked a wrong person, because I don't even know how to read my balance sheet also, unfortunately. Even now I don't.
You like your lab.
Okay, that's my bad luck.
That's
So the figures are always nice, Indians, we love the figures. We always, we are good mathematic people.
Yes.
We always put the figures at the top. But we put the figures on the top, on the mountain, Himalayas, and then the foundation is very weak. How do you achieve that?
Right.
So I think we need to have a foundation to lay, how do we put a strategy, what type of ecosystem we create, and that the younger generation, how they can stay back in India, what type of systems we need to create for the country. And if we do that, and I think that figure is nothing, actually.
Yeah.
But we put the figure, but then our foundation is still weak. And I think we need to strengthen our foundation, change the foundation, stronger ecosystem to be created. If we create that, I think young generation entrepreneurs are amazing. And today, the future of them is a very great. Thank you.
A strong foundation, that's a good footing to stop this session. Any questions from the audience? One or two if we can, if there's anyone. Yeah, can you please identify yourself in a brief question?
I'm Dr. Tapan and I've been part of Laboratories also. Just to give you a context before I go to a questioners, there are about 30,000 applications comes, which has been sorted by probably 8 or 9 CDSUs, officers. Now, what is the innovation you guys really think about that Laboratories can take up to make sure this process has become quicker, probably using AIs, blockchains, anything which probably can lead to quicker regulatories concerning about how pathetic sometimes the clinical trial happens, even extreme ends, how our ethical committees are formed, and how things are run.
Is it targeted to anyone in particular or anyone can take up? Yeah, great. Anyone, any thought? Please.
If I can take a shot at what you're saying, so I think the question is more to do with, what can be done from the regulator's point of view in the system, right? So, I mean, I just briefly alluded to that point when I said that, I said capacity should go up, right? So, if you have too few people, obviously you need more people to review the files. You also need expertise, right? So, if I were to answer that, so I'm saying it's like this issue of, it's like drug controller wanting 400 people more, right? So, this is not now, right? It's a long time. It's still stuck. I would say, please deal with it. Then I would talk about expertise. Check. Needs to have some kind of a game plan, right? So, it is not something which can happen overnight because, I mean, we still be talking about the same thing in the next year's conference, saying that nothing has happened, right? But the question is, you have a plan. You know what kind of expertise which will enable moving the needle on these approval processes that I talked about, right? So, because again, if they have very details, all of us face something on the subject expert the matter. It's still made up of part-time people, right? They may have some expertise in certain area, but we are talking about enabling innovation. See, that kind of an expertise should reside in the regulator's system. Right? It can't be something outside people just come in, give an opinion and move on. Right? So if you talk about FDA, for example, they do have resident experts and they actually come from the industry. So do you mean to say
Yeah,
and those industries are done outsourced to TCS, would they do the regulatory outsourcing probably? No.
No.
I'm not even suggesting that. I'm actually saying it the other way around. For a good, strong regulator, they need to have that expertise in-house. Right? So it calls for, it's like, so you kind of leapfrogging and, some bold steps to be taken. We can't just, do it incrementally nor outsource it because it's a regulator again, right? So who will they outsource it to? Private industry? I mean, obviously everybody will be.
Yeah.
Okay, now that it's not in the interest of the country. I'm saying, just let me take examples, right? So you're talking about FDA or even leading agencies. They have people, from the industry, and it's enabling because people join. Why do people leave the industry and go to this? Because they also have a path to grow. They also want to serve the country. They also want to set an example because there's certain how to enable that capacity and expertise.
Dr. Krishna, you wanted to say something.
Quick 2 bullet points. Okay, I've gone through as scientist, entrepreneur, standing in the drug controller's CDSO office. I'm the only guy who knows how the file moves. Even CDSO, DCGI also doesn't know how the file moves.
Sharvil, Satil, you have something to
That's
check
number
with
one.
him.
So, 2 bullet point. Number one, CDSO has to be independent body, not the Ministry of Health. Number one. To strengthen them, I've been proposing state FDAs should be merged with the central FDA. Straight away, state FDAs. Okay. All the spurious drugs are coming only because of state FDAs. The state FDAs has got a licensing authority in some states. That is what is causing the problem, and the reputation of the country is getting destroyed.
In fact, drugs are launched also depending on which state is more friendly.
More friendly. That is controlled by some political lobby then. Okay, the state FDA can be merged with central FDA, then what happens? Extremely, all the human resource can be retrained them and put them into the, immediately one scale up, the operation happens in the country. But that certainly needs a political decision. Thank you.
To end, actually, just one, I'm tempted to ask this. I saw Satish actually take down, like how Dr. Reddy used to take on a piece of paper, write down some points. You were writing something. Is there anything you want to say based on what you you're taking copious notes, so I was just hoping, and I'll end with that. What are one or two ideas? Just share what those copious notes say.
No, I was just saying, so we're talking about vaccines, for example, that it's an excess capacity being built up, and also the competitiveness. We also have to sustain it because, we think that, 60% of the global production, right? So it seems to be great. But the question is, how do you sustain that, and how do you keep adding on to it? Because we are at the position of, envious position as far as Indian vaccine production is concerned. How do you take to the next step, and what would be the enablers? Again, I see a lot of things from the government which I've made notes of.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I think we'll end with this. So, yeah. Thank you again, everyone. Yeah. I think they deserve a huge, a bit more stronger round of applause. It's morning.
Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for that very interesting session.